Alex Mann,
How are you doing, sir?
doing well, man. How are you doing?
I am also not bad. Not bad
Are
at
you in
all.
Florida?
I am. I am. I'm in Florida. Just in 100-degree heat here, and the humidity spiking. But apparently, humidity spiking across the country now, and apparently we're all going to suffer
It's nice and cool here in the Bay.
for now. For now. Did you get a
There's no
haircut?
humidity. There's no humidity in California, bro.
Oh, what I was reading today in the New York Times, the MSM, that apparently humidity, we're going to see a spike in humidity across the entire country in places that have never even experienced humidity. So although I'm in Florida with obvious humidity,
It's
that
so foreign to me now that when I actually experience humidity, I notice it immediately. Like, oh, there's
yeah,
water in the air. Well, that's weird.
yeah. So apparently it's for the whole country is in for a treat this week.
That does not sound like a lot of fun at all. And how is your summer going so far?
Uh, it's you're probably the person I speak to most, the most frequent person I speak to. So well, how's yours going? How's everything on your end?
You know, it's a slow. It's just a slow grind. It's going pretty well. We've been doing some really fundamental updates on our platform, and I just saw it all for the first time yesterday.
Yeah,
It's crazy. It's crazy. Everything's different. The UI is different. All the friction points are gone. It's working really well. Like, it's something that I'm actually not going to be completely ashamed of, which has been a long time kind of getting here. So I'm excited to be able to start talking about that. It's everything that I've done to this point is basically just laying the groundwork for what is to come,
yeah.
So I'm looking forward to getting there. Hopefully it'll be within the next month or two, but the big stuff is kind of done and it looks a lot better. And AI is a great equalizer.
Yeah, no, I mean it is, and then you see OpenAI just building products that are competing with everybody else. So it's like,
Here's the thing that you shouldn't worry about that too much though, because the OpenAI is just going to go the same way that Google went.
yeah,
They're
I
going
mean,
to create a bunch of cool stuff, but for whatever reason, internal corporate politics, bullshit, like the stuff's
I
just going to fall away.
saw a post today on LinkedIn. I'll send it to you if I find it again. And it was the theme of the post was, because OpenAI launched their call recording feature last week, and so on ChatGPT you can, I guess, have ChatGPT live on your desktop, and it will record whatever call you're doing and summarize the notes. And it's like, yeah, this is an example of how OpenAI is going to, take over software. And I was reading it. I wanted to comment on that person's post, but these things are gonna go viral. So I was like, I'm not gonna comment on it. But I was like, that is such an annoyingly annoying, hot, like stupid take. Because to your point, I mean, if we had to worry about OpenAI building a product for everything, then nothing would get made. You know what I mean? Like, as in, they made a very, very easy feature, which is call recording. But to suggest that it's like, whoa, like 50 startups are out of business today, it's just like so dumb. I don't know how else to say it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, wild to me. I like, and we talk about this a lot. It's not just about like the obvious sort of visual UX experience that people get from ChatGPT, like talking to something and getting answers, but it's like what you're doing, which is like the workflow optimization. It's not just as simple as like querying something. It's like the whole process, like organically bottoms up, will be changed for people. And I think about that a lot with a lot of AI products. I mean, I think that's what separates, good ones from bad. Effectively, it's like when people go, "Oh my God, this has changed my job."
If you're building and you're only incorporating and thinking about what's been built to date, like you're already kind of losing, you know? Like SaaS is being completely commoditized. So what it's going to come down to is who gives the best value.
Yeah. I mean, you see that? Did you see that guy who created a DocuSign clone in like 10
Yeah.
minutes with Lovable, and then DocuSign sent him a cease and desist? And he's like,
Cease and desist from what?
yeah. I
From an
mean,
electronic signature application?
it's funny because DocuSign has thousands of employees and is $1 billion business, and you're like, what? You know what I mean? It's like, and they want to focus on this kid who's like an indie hacker who was able just to show that an AI tool could effectively build the same product for nothing. So it's interesting. I mean, I'd love to see stories like that. Like good for him. Like vibe coding your way to success.
Yeah. 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 Fundamentally, that's just, I don't know what's going to happen in software. It's, we're definitely seeing the beginning of more agentic platforms that are starting to come out.
1,000%.
That's the next big buzzword.
I like.
It's something that the Bolt guys talked about 7 years ago. Was that essentially in a lot of SaaS, people are building features, not platforms. What I mean by that, they're building one little feature set, one little thing that could bring value into a person's life.
Yeah.
But when you look at it holistically, it's just one thing of a series or a suite of things that someone actually really needs.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you build the first feature just to get somebody in there. It's almost like a taste of your product, and then you've got to build and build and build for that person.
But it almost seems like people are doing that. Like, you ever see janky houses where they built without code, like in the Appalachians or something like that, where
Yeah.
they will just build based upon whatever materials they have laying around, and then all of a sudden you get this like gargantuan house that's like ramshackety with like no rhyme or reason for why anything is built.
Well, I mean, that's what separates good product from bad. I mean,
Oh yeah,
look at the guys at Ramp. Those guys have built a phenomenal product that effectively started as a corporate credit card, and then is like just evolved its feature and product set that seems so evolutionary to it, if that makes sense. Like everything they've released is like, oh, that's a very obvious next thing. You know what I mean? Like they're like evolving it in a way that, like, say, obviously, like Salesforce doesn't do it that way. You know,
I'm sure you heard about the Base 44 acquisition as well.
is that the kid who vibe coded for 80 million to, or whatever it was,
To Wix.
to Wix? Do you know what my actual genuine thought about that was? That's like signing Cristiano Ronaldo in soccer. It's like that's a transfer fee for that guy. Like when Real Madrid buys Ronaldo for $80 million from Manchester United, like because I'm like, if he could vibe code it, it's presumably we want your intellectual curiosity in our business so much so that we're willing to pay you $80 million for this.
It's crazy.
As much as the actual, because it's only like it's not even 6 months old. So what are you buying? You know what I mean? So you're buying the person.
Yeah, you're definitely buying the person. Yeah, it's a true acqui-hire. I mean, it's just like what OpenAI did with Jony Ive, right? On a much more macro level.
Yeah, on a multi-billion. But then you're seeing Facebook do it now.
Well, now they're saying Facebook's trying to drop 100 million. They were going after Suskever, but instead they hired his CEO instead.
And then they're trying to poach OpenAI talent with insane cash comp, and
they're turning them down.
Which
is the funniest part. They're turning them down. $100 million.
I mean, what a tribe they've got there. I mean, what does that say about the culture of OpenAI? You know what I mean? I mean, is it culture, or is it they're just giving so much stock equity that it's like, dude, like your cash is nothing to me.
golden handcuffs, perhaps.
1,000%.
Golden handcuffs a little bit, I would imagine.
And I presume if you came to OpenAI and said, "Hey, look, I got an offer from Facebook. They want to hire me."
Well, what's your opinion on that? Because I've always generally advised people not to do that.
To what? Show a salary to their
to take a counter offer from their employer.
It's interesting because I'm like, well, okay,
from a salesperson's perspective.
Okay, from a salesperson's perspective, it's like, dude, like you're soulless. Like I'm here for the money, not the culture. You know what I mean? And I think deep down, everyone's there for the money, but we've been sold for the last 20 years in software that you're there for the culture. Like it's a family, we're all in this together kind of thing. So part of me thinks that it's like, part of me morally is like, oh, if somebody came to me and tried to leverage me, I'd be like, F off. Like, dude, like this is, you want it so bad, go take that money. On the inverse, now that I'm in the talent space, I'm like, the cost of hiring, the cost of sourcing, the cost of paying recruiters to find and figure out that talent, the cost of time not having that person working on projects is the 3 to 10% salary bump that is it that like bad to pay out? You know what I mean? Like,
but here's the thing: if you've got good management practices, your employee wouldn't be doing this to you in the first place.
But I guess someone like Facebook or Meta, for example, are probably just like, let's identify every single engineer that's at OpenAI and LinkedIn or whatever, and let's go get them. And it's like, no matter the cost. And I mean, it's very smart by Facebook. Look, I mean, if we think AI is going to be $100 billion industry in the next 10 years, well, spending $100 million to just get the talent to build it seems like cost of doing business. You know what I mean? And I think like that's interesting. And what's even more wild is that Apple is not doing anything like that. Where it's like, just.
But I mean, how? If they actually build AGI, all those people are going to be worthless.
Oh, well, I mean, look at Cursor. I mean, isn't that the whole pitch of their product? That it's like engineers, and I presumably that'll move up the stack, that like, up the sort of management stack that, okay, yeah, entry-level software engineers have been replaced by AI, but like soon we get into like, senior developers, whichever, all, who knows, maybe principals someday. It kind of just depends, I mean, there was an Apple paper that spoke about AGI. Did you see that last week?
No, tell me about it.
So Apple released a white paper basically saying that LLMs are not intelligent.
No.
And the gist was they're just amazing at rote learning patterns. So what we experience when we use an LLM is obviously amazing, but it's just rote learned how to respond to you. As opposed, like you do an exam and you rote learn your essay or whichever, so you get it, you spit it on the page, and it's like, yeah, that'll get you where you need to go, but might be slightly contextless. Now, if that paper, if you Google it, it's coming for a bit of heat online because people are like, oh, the person who wrote it is like a junior software engineer or something, irrespective of the fact that she's got an insanely great academic background in engineering or one of the co-writers of this paper. But in effect, maybe that's part of the reason why maybe Apple, as part of their defense in this space, is like, dude, like no matter what we put into it, like no matter how much money we invest into this space, we'll come out with a similar kind of model to somebody else. You know what I mean? Because it's just like forcing it to rote learn as opposed to think itself. So to your question about AGI, like I wonder how far away we are. It's like, that little jump. I mean, it's like, in Westworld where the robots. Did you watch Westworld?
Oh yeah.
Great show, and it's tragic. Doesn't even on HBO anymore.
Oh,
but
yeah,
like,
we could spend some time talking about Westworld right now.
Great show. But like the way the robots are really smart, but they've rote learned their role, and then she finds that maze, the thing, and is able to realize reality or whatever it is, in the show, and she's the one that gets the AGI. And I think
talking about Dolores.
Yeah, Dolores. Sorry, yeah, the Dolores character. Yeah, and it's like, but if you think about it, that gap, none of the rest of them were able to make the gap. And it took her a long time to even get to that point of getting to the gap. You know what I mean? Many iterations of her. And I wonder that gap to AGI, like I speculate that we're probably like, that's probably a jump that's like, cool that we can see AI tools do really amazing things today. But is it even intelligence versus just amazing pattern recognition and rote learning versus like an actual thing that is AGI? That has consciousness or whatever version.
I certainly think an AGI is going to have the LLM transformer aspects of it as part of its underlying bedrock foundational technology. But there's going to have to be higher levels of reasoning and connections. There's going to have to be almost something similar to like the synaptic connections in a brain, that it's where it's able to create new ones based upon that it's bringing in. I don't know if we necessarily have the neural architecture to go there, because I mean the LLM, the transformer based LLMs that we have today are predominantly so smart, like that people who made them don't even admit they don't know how they work.
Yeah.
So if that's true, then that means that we've hit a plateau prior to an AGI or an SI. Or something's going to come out of it that they're not expecting, and it will then turn itself into an AGI, but then it will be controlling everything, and we will have no control over it, which is going to freak a lot of people out.
I think on that though, I think, we're still so early days in terms of the application of this sort of like insane volume of information. Like I was listening to Sam Altman, maybe not listening, maybe reading. I can't remember what way I consumed this, but he was talking about his prediction, and it was like, especially around medical research.
Yeah.
Like cancer research and stuff, like AI could, I would never want to be the kind of person on a live show like this or be on any sort of recorded thing saying, oh, there's going to be a cure for cancer because of AI. But I mean, the fact that even today you or I could take literally a photo of a document the doctor gives us, upload it into ChatGPT, and it can basically give us a diagnosis that could be on par or even better than what the doctor actually said to us. But in terms of like the research, imagine having access to like all that data to like, I guess look at things in different. I'm no expert in it, but the fact of the matter is like that for me, I think is going to be the most amazing next thing when we have that sort of like Apollo 11 moment when it comes to like medicine, that it's like because of AI. And I think that we're
Alzheimer's is gone.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'd say we're actually very close.
Cancer is gone because of AI.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think there'll be like Apollo 11 moments where like you will know where you were when something was like eradicated because of AI.
Or something was extended, like the human lifespan.
Yeah, maybe.
Which is an ongoing debate of my family. My wife would not like to live forever. I would. She thinks I'm crazy, but I would absolutely live forever if I could.
You got me. There's obviously so many ways it goes. Like I saw your man Brian Johnson went viral this week because he was in India and he left an interview because he said the air quality was making him upset too much. And I kind of thought to myself, I was like, you know what? I'm happy with the way I live my life.
But final thought on Westworld. The craziest thing about Westworld for me was when I realized that essentially everything that they had created was Facebook on crack. They sold an experience to individuals and brought people into an environment that they fully controlled. And you could be a white hat or a black hat or somewhere in between, and you could make a series of decisions from being very good to being very, very evil with no repercussions. The amount of psychological insight and data that it gave the creators of that game about each individual and what they could then do with that data over the long term scared me.
Yeah. And I mean, I think to that point, I think it was very ahead of its time when it came to discussing.
Very ahead of its time.
And I think that last season of it, where it was basically an AI that was able to predict like sort of behavior.
Not only did it predict behavior, but it completely took over the world within a generation. It's like 25 years. It completely controlled humanity within 25 years.
Yeah, I mean it's wild. But I do think we do need to. I mean, we could have a separate episode.
We could have a separate chat just about Westworld. So one thing I wanted to talk about, I came across a website that gave me access to a rash of reports all around hiring, recruiting, jobs. And so I'd love to kind of talk about this World Economic Forum Future of Jobs report for 2025 and just a few key statistics. They're projecting that there will be 170 million new jobs by 2030, which will be 14% of today's total employee. 92 million jobs will be projected to be displaced. So that's about 8%. So 8% of employment will be displaced, but 14% of today's total employment will be created within the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty foamy to me.
That seems very foamy, but I would err on the more optimistic side of this, which would be that just because we're destroying jobs today doesn't mean that we're not going to have jobs to be done tomorrow. Like, it's not going to be a jobless world anytime soon, one way or another. But I do think we talk about this a lot. It might just be a spike in entrepreneurs. That we might see, to our point, like less 10,000s at people-sized companies, far, far, far more 1,000 person-sized companies. The tools are at everyone's disposal in a way that was never before.
Net growth of 78 million jobs by 2030. 22% total labor market churn. So that's almost a quarter of the labor market is going to churn. So you understand why we've got societal unrest. You understand why we have people demonstrating in the streets.
Is that churn in the sense that people are like going to not go back to work? Or that we're
just going to be fired and are going to be churned in terms of their employment. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of already happening. I mean,
it is. It is. So it's going to continue on, but to the point where it's almost a quarter of the total labor market. It really helps you understand why Donald Trump was elected president.
But he's bringing back jobs to America,
Well, I mean, that's what he said he was going to do. That's what people wanted to do. Because that's what people wanted to
say that with a wink,
I know. Well, yeah, I know, because that's what people wanted to hear, and that's where critical thinking is critically needed skill. 39%.
So building on what we're talking about this article, okay? I saw ADP data this week that said we've had an increase in boomerang hiring, and
really,
yes, that this year. Where was it? I'll send the link in. Okay. I have it open. I had a tab open here because I was reading about this earlier. It's like the share of boomerang hires or people who rejoin an old company made up 35% of new hires in March. 35% in March. Okay.
Wow.
And then up from 31% the year before that and 27% in 2018. And so to your point about like churn in the market and like we're losing jobs, part of me is also like where you mentioned that word foamy, which is such a great word. It's like, that seems very foamy to me because I think we've gone through this sort of like slash and burn phase of the economy with Doge and also with fucking companies laying off people for AI. justifying your job for AI, and probably the reason why there's probably such a dramatic uptick is probably related to, people actually, I need that person that was really good at that job to come back, and I need to get them, and then
Or
people
I don't have
are
to train them. They can get up to speed quickly. They're a known commodity to me. I know what I'm getting with them.
mm, so it's interesting. I mean, definitely foamy.
If you're new to the pod, foam. What mean by foam is like when you're caught up in a wave at the beach and you're in the foam and you don't know which way is up or down. It's how Alex and I have been describing the economy over the last couple of years, and so definitely still in the foam. I mean, it's going to settle into a much bigger ocean. I think it's going to maybe suck us out of the bay into a bigger ocean. 47% of tasks currently performed by humans alone are projected to drop to 33% by 2030. So, I mean, it sounds to me like work will evolve for the better.
I mean, yeah, maybe.
Well, think about it like, a marketer between the days of Mad Men and the days of the digital ZERP era, right? It went from being exclusively male and kissing a bunch of executives in Detroit's butts to being much more homogenous, spread out across the country, dealing with a lot more um, companies than were available to do business with in the past. A lot more diversity, a lot more opportunity. I mean, that's been the trend over the last 60 to 70 years, from homogeny to real diversity in terms of opportunity, industry segments, even people that you're able to partner with, both, the funny part, Alex, is up until 2013, I was a regional employee who worked nationally occasionally.
A regional employee.
I worked completely regionally. I was hiring within distance to large corporate offices that I was working in.
Yeah.
I would occasionally, and I started to over time work nationally across the United States, but it was usually like 30 to 50% of my work. The other 30 to 50% of my work was local.
Yeah,
It
like
wasn't until I moved out to the Bay Area and I worked at Google that I instantly went global, and I've been global ever since.
Yeah, it's interesting because like when I was doing the pod, I would have a lot of talent marketplaces, and a lot of things we would discuss when I would have people who founded like talent marketplace in the pod were like the perception of foreign workers in the United States, and hiring that, and like, before very much outsourced call center perception, which is like janky and people hate it, to the point that it's like now that like I'm surprised that there wasn't a political issue in 2024, that the amount of tech companies that just hire abroad now because there's such good talent in South America, in Southeast Asia, in Europe, that you can find people. Like, to hire a Bay Area engineer, you probably could get 3 engineers in Brazil for that price, for one. So like, it's a no-brainer to like hire
Software
international.
coming out of India is looking really good.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, the talent is everywhere. And so the question is like, what's your sort of like burden to make that happen in the United States? You know what I mean? So you do need to think global about like your talent as well. Like, I mean, I guess you were just in the right place at the right time, going from regional territory kind of focus on national to getting into Google and being like, oh wow, this is actually a global org and this company hires from every corner of the planet.
Yeah, and it really shows you just how much more opportunity there is out there. I think for business, for people, for senior people, I think it may come to a point where you're like, I don't know what else to do other than start my own business. I just feel that's going to become more and more prevalent in the future.
You mean as if you were out of work, that this would be the kind of point of view, or
Well,
just
yeah, because you're like, let's say, a director or a VP, and you've been laid off now, and you've been out of work for 10 months. What do you do?
totally? And in particular, if you're older, like if
Yeah,
you're,
yeah, that's who usually those people are, right? So you're
yeah.
in your 40s, your 50s, maybe your early 60s. I mean, even early 60s, you probably are thinking, I've got 15, 20 years of work ahead of me.
I would agree. I actually had this conversation.
Our culture is so dominated by young people, and technology is so dominated by young people, which is really funny, who are all now starting to hit their 30s and 40s, who've got kids who are growing up who are realizing like, oh, this shit's difficult. Like, yeah. Well, we were living when you guys were all like, we're gonna change the world. ZERP era.
Oh, God bless it. God bless it. No, it's interesting. I think, I think like maybe like it's the only question to survive now. Like, I mean, I had a conversation with somebody recently who is in his 50s and has worked like SVP sales in large tech company and joined a startup, and that startup didn't work out, and then joined another startup, and that one got bought by PE. And he was telling me, I was in an interview and they were like, why'd you leave these two companies so quickly? And he's like, dude, like I was at this large one and I took a bet on a startup, and then it's like, he said he felt so unprepared for that question, given that like the rest of his resume was years at this company, years at this company, years at this. And then it's like, dude, like, does anybody even recognize the market for talent that we're in right now? Like, as in, this is like, if you're out of work now, I'm like, there's
It's
a very good reason.
confounding.
It's
There's so, in terms of dry, I mean, there's dry powder in terms of the rich people who have a lot of money. There's dry powder in terms of world class talent that's available.
total percent.
And yet, the rich people who got the dry powder money are still looking at all their investments from their prior snobby lens. Instead of saying, like, I should find the best talent that's underutilized in the market and bring them together and have them identify what it is that they're going to chase and what it is that they're going to improve. Like, I don't see anybody doing that. I mean, not any type of that scale. If anything, it's at happenstance. I mean, VCs have their EIR programs, right? Which basically you have to be buddies with somebody in the firm to get into. But it's not system. I mean, somebody could be doing a lot more, like a SoftBank.
You
You
mean
imagine if SoftBank just said, "Listen, we've got $5 billion that we're putting into this pool, and we're bringing together the best. We're going to put together pods: a GTM expert, a recruiting expert, an ops expert, a customer success expert, a finance expert."
Yeah, I think it's interesting that they would, because given that they're in a position to invest in a lot of companies, that they wouldn't create a pipeline of talent ready just to drop into companies at a moment's notice. Like, we've got 20 companies in our portfolio. And to your point, we got customer success, we got operations, we got finance, we got whatever. Boom, 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 boom. Because if people are looking for work, they just want to join a startup. You know what I mean? Especially people in tech. They're like kind of agnostic to what they're really solving, but it's startup.
There's got to be something better out there where you could structure something where people could get real value from equity.
Lol.
Right? And not these games that have been played over the last 10 years. I'm talking like the early Facebook type of crap.
Well, I mean, that's like 1 in a million.
I know, but there's been enough data. There's been enough startups. I mean, that was the early days. I mean, realistically, the early days are really the 60s. But like I would say of the modern variant, those were the early days.
Yeah, I think it's just like one of those ones that's like, there's a whole pool of talent out there, broad spectrum of it, like a broad spectrum. And companies have been keeping their powder dry for, last year, no large tech company was basically hiring, especially in non-engineering. You know what I mean? It's like not really hiring. This year, kind of turning back on. But like, there's a whole pipeline of people waiting for those opportunities now. And you could say on one hand, why didn't they just take a job anywhere? But again, it's not as simple as that. And if you've got a broad spectrum of talent that's out there, it's a lot of people competing for a few jobs. And I'm fascinated by like, I'm worried, like, how do people stay out of work for 9 months? You know what I mean?
It's
Like,
not easy. It's not easy.
I sympathize with that a lot, because if you're in this industry for a long time, like, you're good.
What are salespeople saying? Well,
But
what's happening to the sales world? Because I mean, I know they're scrambling to get revenue. I'm getting contacted by lots of them. Are
yeah,
salespeople feeling optimistic? Are salespeople feeling scared?
I would say that if you're looking at a spectrum from scared to thrilled, probably on the just on the pH 6 on that scale, which would be on the scared side. So like in the middle, but like I would say
Scared
17.
rabbits running, trying to get whatever they can.
Like I think it's worse depending on the company you're in. Like I mean, what Microsoft is laying off 20% of its business this week or something, and it's going to be all sales that's getting let go.
Oof.
Interesting. But then you see like, and from my own experience, and basically every foreign person I know who works in the United States, they won't always got a visa. Most, I say 95% of them work in sales, and their vibes are up. And these are people who work at large tech companies, large kind of known tech companies. But then anyone I talk to who works in sales at a startup is like, this is the fucking worst thing I've ever seen. And I think there's a couple of things like startups. If you're an AI startup, okay, you're going to raise $5 million, between $5 and $10 million. My hands are very watching a lot of Sopranos lately. They like between 5 and 10, but say like a company raises between 5 and 10 million for their seed. Amazing. The chances of that company raising a Series A is probably like less than 10%. So 9 in 10 of those companies are going to burn out, flame out within 18 months. So you join that as a salesperson, go to market. Dude, you got to be bloody closing. And that's a hard place to be, and not every company is going to make it. So if you're talking about 10%, like that's 90 companies out of 100 are not going to get to Series A likely. You know what I mean? Or within enough time that they're not going to have to change the business. Everyone I know who works in sales in a startup is absolutely stressed out of their minds. Yeah.
Really?
And that's the pressure that like say raising $5-10 million in a seed does to a business, because it's like you got to look at the model and go, how in God's name are we going to get from 0 to 100K in revenue to $1 million in revenue in 1 year, 18 months? You know what I mean? Like these are like large jumps. And then I think it's exacerbated. I think part of the reason why lots of sales is under a lot of pressure is like AI has created these sort of fairy tale moments. Like Fixer is a very good example of that. Like those guys have done an amazing job at like getting to whatever $15 million ARR in 9 months or whatever the number was that I saw recently, something crazy. And it's like now every other company is benchmarked against that. Now the investor sees that this is the potential for like an AI product, irrespective of like industry or like what they're actually building. It's like that's what you need to do. And I think that level of intensity is very much getting after sales. So it's interesting that you're getting a lot of inbound from sales as well.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of inbound from people trying to sell me their outbound services.
Oh God, yeah. Well, that's a separate thing. That's like a whole subculture of like LinkedIn content that I'm exposed to, which is like, let me identify people who are in a manual business and let me sell them an outbound process. Or are they selling you any N8N make.com sort of automations? You'll
Yeah,
get a
like
lot.
we've already got our own. It's
Yeah.
like do a little bit. Like nobody ever does any research before they contact me for sales, and honestly, 90% of the time, it's fucking insulting.
Well, see that what you're getting is the example, the template that people on the path of like the righteous in go to market seem to think is the way, which is they'll pull a list of like recruiting CEOs, that would be you, and then they'd extract that data, plug it into clay.com. They'd enrich your LinkedIn and find out everything about you from your LinkedIn, and they would do it automatically, not like
But
actually.
they're not my LinkedIn. They're trying to sell me recruiting services.
Yeah. See, because you fall into like a bucket, and then that's it.
Well, I fall into two different buckets because I'm building a SaaS platform and I run a recruiting services business.
Yeah, well, like they'll probably like see it as a recruiting service, not as the SaaS, unfortunately. So you need to put way more
But they've done
keywords.
no research, and it just
But
proves my point
this is
that
the
like
point. This is the
AI
point
is
I'm making.
killing
Yeah,
sales.
people are not, because the thing is, you see that they look at that. I mean, I would look at that as I'm going to put a list of 3,000 people, and I'm going to get 3% reply rate. So like that's 90 people will reply. 45 will say fuck off or some version of bad language that will come with it. So you get 45 people going, I'm interested. So that campaign to send 3,000 emails, probably to set up and spend or hire somebody to do that, probably cost you $1,000. So all you got to do out of the 45 people you get that like are interested in hearing from you, let's just say you close 10% of them, so that's 5 of them. Okay, so you get 5 customers from those 3,000 contacts that you reached out to. Those people don't care about researching. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like old SDR where, you know, you had to like know everybody's social, find all their press releases, find anything they've written on the internet ever with a point of view on this topic. Think about it, craft that email. Now it's all just been spat into Clay, and they use the Clay's AI to draft a lot of the emails. Here's a template, plug and play from the information you find in his LinkedIn.
Yeah, I see those emails too. They're similarly soulless.
Yeah, like 1,000%. Like, the thing about it is like, how do you fool people to believe that it's a real email coming from you? You know, here's a better example. Like, when you send an email, let's parlay that into like recruiting, because it's the same thing. So you're going to get a list of candidates. Are you going to sit down and research me, Michael, when you reach out to me?
It depends on the role.
I always compliment recruiters. I go, great automated message.
It depends on the role.
Okay, so speak more to that then.
If you are a senior machine learning engineer with 8 years of experience, yes. If you're like a senior DevOps, senior backend engineer, if you're a director of product management, if you've got very specific hardware experience that's very rare to find, yes. If you're a 3 to 10 year salesperson, no.
Yeah. So you're saying
it's about volume. It's about the talent pool, right?
Yeah, I mean, but if you're looking to hire an SVP of enterprise sales for a Series D startup,
I would definitely do the AI personalization and
you
the
do the AI personalization, even of that. Interesting.
Yeah. If it's the more senior the role, or the more technical or hard to find the skill set, then the higher touch, right?
Do you think that like cold phone calls would
For
work
recruiting or sales?
for recruiting?
Oh no.
No. So you wouldn't, because it's interesting.
I've done it in the past and I've been successful, but generally I think that I think it's different than how it was even 10 or 15 years ago, Alex. There are so many different things that are now fighting for your attention that we did not have 10 or 15 years ago. And I think that a telephone call to me, and I could be wrong, and I know there's salespeople out there who are like, I'm making money doing cold calling. And I would be really curious to hear what the longitudinal study of that is. How many of those cold calls actually became long-term customers? How many of those cold calls turned into long-term relationships? You know, like what I did this week, I talked with a guy I worked with at Google for 45 minutes. He's a recruiting manager in the construction industry for one of the country's largest construction companies. And I just wanted to make him aware of our services and how we were different than others for the next time that he might need some help. To me, that seems much more valuable, right? But like, how do you do that to scale? Which I realized that's the problem I'm pursuing.
Which is building a volume of relationships.
Yes, because during the hardest part of the last 2 years, I've been able basically to stay alive because I have had 3 to 5 very, very strong business relationships with people who utilized my business, who believe in me, who understand what my business can do for their business, and who kept working with me during that time period. Like, and that's what everybody needs. If you've been in business over 10 or 15 years, you need that. Those are people who can introduce you to other people who can get you a job. Those are people who you can sell to. Those are people that you can do business with, right?
But I guess
I really do feel it's time to go. It's time to get back to everybody's saying it, all different areas and aspects of society, people need to start getting involved. Need to start getting involved in their communities. We need to start building business communities. We need to start getting involved with each other.
So let's take that to recruiting then. I mean, recruiting has seen more innovation in the last 15 years and lots and lots of different industries.
The innovation it's seen is marketing and sales technology cast.
Yeah, exactly. But have we taken the best practices? Like, has talent acquisition brought on the best, like to the point that you're saying about community?
AI cold outreach works better in recruiting than it does sales.
Because you think
AI cold outreach has killed sales, and it's just a juggernaut for recruiting.
So you're like, if somebody's listening, like Adjovi Jimison, who's on the call here with us, who commented on this. So hello, Adjovi, by the way. Thanks for having me. Are you saying that, like, in recruiting in particular? Because I know that you said you like to get like the names of the CEOs and the names of like the people you're emailing and get those into your system to send emails like that, which is absolutely crush. In a way that they say, like, you should be doing a lot of that volume emailing.
Hey, once again, going back, I mean, I think that this is probably a good time to start drawing up, and good to see you, Doji. And it's good to see that you're seeing openings amongst your clients. I mean, hopefully we're beginning to see the signs of the thaw. Alex and I have been talking over this for the last couple of months, that we're starting to see some signs of thawing in the economy. But ultimately, I just feel that it would behoove us all to focus more on building relationships and really getting to know each other. Like, you see it all the time. Like, read Jason Lemkin, founder of SaaStr, on LinkedIn. Yeah. He constantly complains about shitty salespeople who don't know anything about him.
It's his bugbear.
It is his bugbear. Like, I'm spending how much money with you, and I'm coming into a renew cycle, and you don't even know that I'm Jason fucking Lemkin? I mean, seriously.
It is very true.
If Jason Lemkin was my fucking customer, do you know he would know me on a first name basis? I would know everything about the business I was helping to support him with. I would be making sure I was giving him the absolute most value that I possibly could. And I would be looking every time I could to build a relationship with him and get referrals from him. And I just feel like this is the world that we need to go back to. Yes, we've now got systems that allow us to contact everybody in the world. But who are you really building relationships with?
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, he's like the king of it. Like,
he's the king.
And like the stuff he even posts is like such no-brainer stuff, you know. Like, and I think that's the question that's the issue I have with a lot of go-to-market marketing SaaS, is that like everything seems so highfalutin. You know, not that you know what I mean, use that phrase. Everything is overly highfalutinized in the sense that the stack and the way you build things. And I'm like, dude, like, literally just be cool.
Do you have to be an operations expert to use it? Probably not going to make it in the long run. Right? Are you exclusive?
To what?
To an industry, a segment?
I mean, personally, no.
I'm just saying in general. I'm just saying in general for software.
Yeah, like, I would say software. Look, I mean, it's great that if you had a fintech background that you stayed in fintech, or you had a great background in MarTech and you want to stay in MarTech. That's absolutely fine. I would never like say to somebody that's not the case. My personal take in it is, especially at startups, that what you should be focused on is the humility of solving problems.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, like, dude, like, I could join a medical tech startup tomorrow and I'm selling to like pharmacy, like PBMs or something. Like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know the first thing about a pharmacy benefit manager. Okay. But like, do I know that we have a problem that we need to reach those people? Okay, cool. Well, let's figure out what are the best ways of reaching those people. Work back from that. And one of the reasons why I use the word humility is, like, there's a lot of pressure just to come in as somebody and go to market and go, we need to launch ABM and we need to spend money on LinkedIn ads. And I'm like, yeah, it's probably likely you might have to do that. But at the same time, every problem has a different solution, you know, and a different way of going about how to get there. You know, not to use the phrase, it's not about the destination, it's the journey. Yeah, it absolutely is about the destination. Yeah. Like, You
And
go
have you
to,
started organic marketing?
yeah, like, but
If
this is the
not,
thing.
why? And
But
if
like,
you haven't, then you need to immediately start that and get that working while you're doing all the paid stuff.
oh, 1,000%. But I would look at it like in the sense that like, is that even for that industry necessary? Like, it would be like,
Mm.
what are we trying to figure out here? Like, it's direct mail. Like, oh, these people are like, they're working from home or something. So it sounds, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I mean. Like, you got to be very agnostic to a lot of this stuff,
Yeah.
which basically means from an industry perspective, you can be agnostic. Like, I've been in fintech, I did online education, consumer credit cards, all of them have really helped me because I didn't know the first thing about direct mail when I got into consumer credit. And then I realized that you cannot do marketing and credit cards for
If you're
some.
opening a local, like if you're opening a local gym, direct based mail,
Totally. And I mean, like,
right?
you got to do your social, like,
But hit every single person within 20 miles with a grand opening coupon,
totally. And then you got to
right?
get
That's how you will
their
drive
name, get
people,
their email, build that list, then you got to create content for that list.
right?
So like, you're not in the business of running a gym, like you're in the business of running a gym / media company. Like that's like for all these different businesses, like I think today to thrive, because you actually said something earlier about like competing, like you're a gym, you're competing with Netflix. You know what I mean? Like the choice is either I work out or I sit on my couch and I watch Netflix. So like, how do you make your gym more compelling and a reason to go? Like, what are the things that make that gym compelling? It's probably like clean gym, bare bones. Okay, it's probably like good equipment, brass tacks. But like, why are you coming back again and again and again versus other gyms is probably the community. So like, what are you doing to engender that community?
Yeah.
Are you doing like Hyrox group chats? Are you doing like social singles mixers, all the different things that like the people who go to your gym, why would you want them still in the building? And I think that just goes back to like, you got to be very in go to market. You have to be very humble about the way you go about figuring out your solutions to the problems your business have, which means like when I would like to hire people, I got asked this a lot lately, actually, is like, what's my sort of take on hiring people for like a startup? And we've talked about this a lot, but I've said it in the context of like, obviously I want somebody who's built something in AI because I want to bring in the intellectual curiosity into the business. But the thing that I look for is actually, there's a great article written by an old boss of mine, a lady called Molly Graham, and she wrote Giving Away Your Legos. And we've spoken about this before, but like, when you're hiring somebody, especially into marketing or especially into growth or whichever, is like, I'm looking for like a history of great attitude as opposed to a history of like, you worked at this company, or I mean, they all kind of play into each other, but really what I'm looking for is attitudinal differences, attitudinal edge. Like, is this person absolutely comfortable not having a clue what they're doing? Is this person absolutely comfortable being released into the wild and kind of going, dude, like, I need you to come back to me for things. Like, I need you to bring recommendations. I'm not hiring somebody for like them necessarily to like have process. It's like, no, dude, I need you to come to me and you build a process that works for you so that you can bring me the success that I need to then get the success over the line for the business. And that's like an attitude that I try to screen for or look for. But that works great in marketing because it's such a big tent. Like, you want to go to get a job at Facebook, you get a job in product marketing. That's your box and no more. If you're in a startup, tomorrow you're doing an event, next
You're
week
doing digital, you're doing SEO, you're doing social media, you're
so
doing PR, you're doing inbound, you're doing demand gen, you're doing PPC. Is your SEO optimized? Like all that shit. I think that's why I held off on doing marketing for as long as I did, because I just have built marketing departments and I know how important it is.
Well, this exactly that. It's super important, and this is what I mean by the humility. It's like we have like the problem is growing the business, and it's like how you think about it in the sense like allocating the resources towards like, well, events will work for us, ads might not work for us, PR might work very well for us, paid influencers might not. Email marketing, whichever. You have to trade that off because ultimately you're going to have, if you grow the business, they will be their own individual domains. But like, until then, they're kind of like all on you to figure out and experiment your way through to kind of go, what works for me and what works for us.
Well, we are hitting our time limit here, Alex. Once again, the hour has flown by, and I feel like we've talked about a lot. We barely even got into this WEF future of jobs. I think moving forward, what we're going to try to do is I'll hit things from the recruiting perspective. Alex will hit things from the go-to-market, sales, and marketing perspective, and we will try to bring some sense into the noise of the modern kind of work world and where we are right now. So thank you all for joining us for Talent Grind Live. We'll be back next week. I'm Michael Doran. Alex Mann, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, sir.